In today's video, guys, we're going to be putting some new lights onto my ML270. So without further ado, let me introduce what lights we're going to be chucking on it. Most of the lights for this project have now arrived, so as you can see we've got 3 of these 10 watt steady floodlights. So they're going to go on the sides and the back of, you can sort of see a bit of a photo there, they're going to go on the sides and the back of our roof rack to give us a bit of light, just generally sort of around camp and when we're driving around at night. And then here we've got a 41 inch 28 LED light bar which will go right out the front of our roof rack somewhere out here, and that's going to give us our driving light. I've also got coming a couple of little bit bigger lights than this, and they will go out the sides sort of to at a 45-degree angle from the corner of this, sort of facing out like that, and they will light up the edges of the road when we're driving. Anyway, we're going to unbox these and start bolting them on, at least sort of find their position, and then we'll take them off when we paint it. Alright guys, well, if you haven't watched the last episode, here's a real quick catch up on how we made our roof rack. So here's what it was originally, just off a Land Rover. Then we proceeded to cut it down to make it more slimlined. We then, here in this next scene, we painted it satin black, and in a second you'll be able to see how it is finished. Please make sure to go over and watch the full video on my channel of this roof rack so that you can see how we built it pretty much from scratch, and even made some custom bracketry and stuff. But anyway, without further ado, let's get back to these lights. Alright, now guys, I'm wiring up these switches. So I've actually pulled out the dash, or at least the stereo, and I'm using these wiring diagrams that I drew up to wire them up, just using a bunch of little clips and soldering and stuff, and they actually worked really well like this and made it nice and easy to put them together, and they end up being quite neat. Well, we've got the switches wired up now, so as you can see, just the lights turn on and off when we flick them, and then when we turn it off at the ignition, all the lights turn out. Alright, well, you wouldn't believe it, but I couldn't find any 4-ply wire to use as my signal wire, so I actually ended up just duct taping 2 rolls of 2-ply wire together to make my signal wires to send through to the relays on the other side of the firewall. We've got all these switches wired up now, so I'll try and explain to you what's happening here. This big 4-core wire there runs down through the dash into the footwell, and that's the signal wire from all the switches. Then we have, these are the ground wires, they go to there, and then here you can see they're going back to the black and back into the cab there. Here it is. This wire here goes on with the ignition. It's wired into the stereo's ignition wire. So it supplies power to all the lights in the switches, and it also supplies power to this relay here. Then this red wire here is coming from the larger 12-volt power supply. So it goes through this relay to then power this. So what that means, was off or not, now all those lights are off until you turn on the car, in which case they all, there we go, they all turn on and obviously work nicely, and they're sending power to here which we will then send through the rest of the car. Anyway, I'm going to proceed to put the dash back together, and then we will go work up on the roof on getting that half of it wired.
Alright guys, well before we get up on the roof I thought I'd show you this picture from a little bit further back in time. Obviously I don't have any footage from putting those lights on, it seems to have gone lost somewhere. However, they were pretty simple to put on, it was just a matter of measuring up the sort of centre points and then drilling holes and bolting them on. Anyway, let's get on to wiring up these lights onto the roof. Let me know in the comments down below guys if you rather the voiceovers or if you rather just a sort of no voiceover and just text to explain what's going on. Anyway, here you can see I'm just wiring up these side lights, so they're being soldered. We're not using any plugs, even though they did come with plugs, and then the wires getting threaded under the roof rack, and then back to the front corner where they will go down into the engine bay. In this clip guys, we're actually testing the voltage from the headlights, trying to find which cable we need to splice into to get the signal for our main light bar. So now that we've found it, we're just cutting the plug away and soldering some new wires in. Getting these headlights to work correctly with both the main switch to turn the big spotlight on and off and the normal headlight, like high beam, low beam switch, took a lot of trial and error and a lot of testing, but we did finally get it working really well.
Well, as you would have seen, hopefully in the time lapse last night, I got all the wiring from the roof sorted out. So I now have, I don't know where it is, here it is. Now have some black silicon, which we will just lay down two beads either side of this just to hold it down and mean no dust gets in there. We'll also glue this in too, just so no dust can get in there and it's all nice and good. Anyway, pulled a bunch of panels out from under the footwell, and as you might be able to see just behind that orange label, there is a bit of a hole with a grommet in it. So once I found that, I was able to pull out the wheel guard. So anyway, now the mission is we're going to try and run this cable here through that grommet, and then probably going to need to extend it, but then it's going to head straight up and into the switches, and then we'll definitely be on the home straight and pretty much done. Anyway, I'll try and film as much of that as I can, but it's in pretty bad angles and I don't have anybody to hold the camera at the moment, so you might not see heaps of it. Alright, well, all all finished. So had it all finished for about just over a day now, so enough to sort of give it a bit of a test. So I'll give you a rundown and then I'll show you some night footage. Anyway, as you can see, we've got the rear light, the two side lights, and then the main light bar that goes out the front. And whilst we're outside, I might as well show you here. This sort of, all the cables are in conduit, as you can see, and zip tied up to the roof rack. And then obviously we've got this nice blackout cover on it for the daytime, which both protects it, and I also personally feel it makes it look a bit cooler. So we'll leave that on. Yeah, that just clips back on like that, and you just take it off at night. So moving into the cab, we've obviously got our switches. All of these are red, which is the same color as the stereo and the aircon controls. I will show you a photo of that in the screen now if I remember. And then we've got, obviously we've got our zombie lights, which these ones in a later project will be wired up to some green interior sort of ambient lighting. We've then got the reverse lights, which obviously turns on the back reverse light, side lights, which obviously turns off the side lights, and the bunny burners, which turns on the front light. We then also have wired up here USB/USB-C charger, and also a voltmeter. So we then pop the bonnet, and I will show you the wiring under there. Alright, so you can see this, all the wires, they go through this conduit here, then into this piece of like black half round conduit, which is siliconed to the actual window itself. And then obviously see we put some nice beads of silicon either side of it, and as you can see that blends into the window really nicely. So it comes out of that into another piece of conduit through this sort of gap in the side of the bonnet here, and then into the engine bay. So here you can see just on the side of the battery box I have wired up all the relays, and then it's all obviously all fused and wired into the battery really nicely, which then also goes, this wire here goes down to the headlights, and that's a signal wire to the headlights, so that main light bar up there can actually be turned on and off with the headlights. Anyway, without further ado, I'll show you some night driving footage, and we'll see how good they are.